Time now for a check of the top business news stories. For that, I'm joined by Owen Fairclough from the Business Desk. Hello, Owen.
Hello, Tom.
Now, we're going to start in the United States. And Apple has been the big overnight story, especially in terms of earnings. Pretty impressive stuff.
Absolutely. And the European markets have really bounced off that, Tom. That's driven a lot of the overnight trade, a lot of the overnight valuations and so on. Let's take a look at the European numbers as they've opened. You can see investors starting to get back into this market, particularly Spain. Good news for them there. The IBEX up around 0.7% this morning. Remember, Spanish borrowing costs are on the up. UK GDP is out at around 10:30 Paris time. You can see the FTSE there broadly in the green. We will know whether the UK is officially in recession or not. The economists say no. They're expecting very flat growth around 0.1%, but we'll see. Those are the Asian numbers for you. You can see there the Nikkei finishing the day around 0.8% up. Now, Tom, you mentioned Apple. The numbers absolutely phenomenal for the last quarter. Once again, this company is breaking records, selling some 35 million iPhones compared to the same period last year. That's another record for Apple. It sent its share price overnight up by some 7%. Well, following this stock has been Josh Raymond. He's the Chief Market Strategist at City Index in London. He joins us now. Good morning to you, Josh. Incredible earnings for Apple. Just setting aside the profits and the numbers for a moment, for me, the real strength for this company seems to be in overturning expectations and breaking preconceptions. We always thought that Apple was a high-end product that didn't really sell in emerging markets, but they've gone and done that. They're selling iPhones like crazy in China.
Yeah, you're right. They've absolutely done it, really. And I mean, Apple has been one of the investors' sort of stellar stocks of pretty much the last 2-3 years, really, since 2009. I mean, the share prices have continually outperformed every stock market index by double-digit percentage figures. So, from that perspective, and also every earnings season, they tend to outperform. They tend to be the outperforming earning stock, and they've delivered again. I mean, the sales side of it. I mean, the EPS, first of all, actually, market was looking around $10 from an EPS perspective. That came in at $12.30 from a diluted perspective. So that outperformed expectations. And you're right, iPhone sales completely trumped most expectations. It was expected to fall back anyway because you get the holiday season effect from the previous quarter. But they came in at 35.1 million iPhone sales. Market was maybe looking around the 30 million. There was even a fear that it could be below 30 million. And it's really been trumped through China and emerging markets. And that really has been the surprise, that the fact that the Apple, obviously, it's become quite a benchmark or an aspirational brand in terms of smartphones and also iPads. And now they have broken completely into China and they can look to build up momentum there. And that's really what investors and shareholders have really been delighted to see from their numbers last night.
And Josh, discounting that overnight bounce we've just been talking about from these results, Apple has actually lost a good sort of 10% in recent weeks. iPad sales below expectations. Do you think we've seen the best of Apple and it's now going to be starting to trade a little lower?
Look, there's two things that really have been driving Apple share prices over the last year or so. One is the Apple story, because everyone wants to buy into the Apple story. It's a success story. People love success stories. They love the fact that Apple have continually to dominate the market. And obviously, you can look at Google and the Android phone and trying to seep a little bit of market share away from that. But those numbers that they've announced last night don't really go align with that. And then the other aspect is people are afraid to short a stock that's continually finding momentum to the upside. Now, we did see the share price fall off around 10%. That's a correction, by the way. So if we continue to see more weakness, then fair enough. There, people may start to think, you know what, this has been it's risen too far, too quickly, and it needs to come off a little bit and correct even more to around the 20% level, for instance. But as we saw in overnight trading after the US closed, the market was looking around sort of 6 or 7% higher, and we're expecting Apple shares to open even higher when the US market opens later on this afternoon. So at the moment, I wouldn't say that it's looking at more weakness from the correction that we saw over the last couple of weeks.
Now, Josh, I know when we communicated yesterday, you said your French was a little bit rusty, but I do know that you are following the French elections from London. Just a word on François Hollande. His camp have been briefing some of the financial papers this morning, trying to water down a little bit of that anti-bank rhetoric, those positions on things like budget deficits, on breaking up retail and investment banks and so on. From where you're standing, do you think maybe this fear of a François Hollande presidency has been a little bit overplayed, and perhaps once in office, should he win that second round, he'll actually understand the realities of office and water down those kind of pledges?
He's in election mode. I mean, I think investors are wise to what politicians tend to do during an election rally. I mean, he's come up trumps on the first round, the second round now against Sarkozy. It's going to be the political effect of what he's trying to tell the general public in France there, and one of those is obviously the fact that they want to stop the strict austerity plans and look towards growth policies. Growth policies, by the way, is something the market wants to hear. It's just a case of trying to find that balancing effect. And obviously you look in terms of banks, for instance, which have been quite volatile since Hollande's rise up in the popularity ranks there in France. It's been a question of maybe, well, look, if they don't look to balance the budget, what could that effect be on France's credit rating, even more so from the other ratings agencies that haven't acted yet, for instance. And then you also look at other effects as well, political hostility towards Germany. We've already seen Angela Merkel try and distance herself away from what Hollande's pledging as well. So the one thing I would say is we always need to try and take it with a pinch of salt when you're in election mode, because they're trying to gain more popularity in the polls. And I think it's probably a bit more warming to see that his advisors have tried to water down those comments over the last 24 hours or so. I think that'll probably help the market reaction. But again, you never really know with these sort of things. Once they get into power, then it's all going to be about what happens in the first 90 days in office. So I think that's really where the volatility will come from, depending on where he steps up.
OK, Josh, we haven't got time to ask you to take a swing at that in French, unfortunately. We do appreciate your time. Many thanks. Josh Raymond at City Index in London there. We've just got time for a couple more of the day's business headlines for you. A former BP engineer has been arrested and charged with destroying evidence related to the Gulf of Mexico disaster. Kurt Mix is alleged to have destroyed texts that highlighted how much oil was leaking from the Deepwater Horizon rig. Mix, who left BP in January this year, was involved in the plugging of the wellhead leak.
And the Italian government has launched new low-cost bank accounts to offset the impact of new laws limiting cash transactions. The accounts are aimed at households with pensioners who receive around €1,500 a month in income. Well, the government is trying to force people to use bank accounts while banning cash transactions above €1,000 to stop people avoiding paying VAT. Well, it's estimated that some 850,000 pensioners in Italy don't have a bank account.
It's a staggering statistic, that, isn't it? I didn't know that. 850,000 people without a bank account in Italy.
That's a bit of a growth area, isn't it? All right. Thank you very much indeed, Owen Fairclough. That was the business news. And thanks to you for watching. We'll have more news coming up in just a couple of minutes with Claire Pride. Stay tuned for France 24.